Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today we are finally ready to attempt to cut my very first time a spiral gear or a helical gear, first time for me. And we're going to be doing that using a fairly complicated setup that I have over here on my Kearney Trekker Model 3H horizontal milling machine. Now, if you are interested in the whole setup process, this is actually part of a series of videos. And I've gone through a lot of the different things that are going on. So to give you an idea, to cut this helical gear, to start out with, I have to have a universal head on my milling machine that allows me to rotate the cutter instead of being at 90 degrees to the work. In this case, I'm at 45 degrees. That angle is going to depend on the gear you need to cut, but mine's 45 degrees. We have a dividing head. The dividing head, of course, is the index for the gear, the number of teeth in the gear. In this case, I have 30 teeth, so I've got this set up where I can rotate this and it will index that gear 30 different times so we can make 30 cuts. I also have down here on the end of the machine a lead attachment. The lead attachment will actually cause, as this piece is cutting, it's going to cause the whole work to rotate as you feed in, because we have this cutter at an angle. If we were to just go straight across there, we'd be making an oval shaped cut all the way across. So in order to get that straight line going at a 45-degree angle, we actually have to rotate the gear as it's turning. Now, I did all my math according to the calculations that are in Machinery's Handbook, which if you're a machinist, you should probably have a copy of that. I actually have a spreadsheet that I was able to put the numbers in, and it calculates a lot of this for me. I had to know the gear, the pitch of the tooth. I got a 10 pitch tooth that I'm cutting. I had to know the number of teeth, 30 teeth on the circle. And I had to know the helical angle. This is the original gear here, and I was able to measure that, and it is, in this case, 45 degrees. I was able to put that information into the spreadsheet here, and it was able to make a lot of the calculations. One of the things that it calculates is the lead, and that's what we have, the lead attachment on here. Now, what is a lead? That's going to be very important in this because we're making these spiral or helical cuts. I should say that when we're making a spiral mill, so as it's cutting, it's turning. It's called a spiral. When you cut a spiral on a cylinder, it's called a helical. So the two words are a little bit interchangeable to one another. A lot of people just call this a spiral gear. The really correct term is a helical gear, but they are interchangeable terms. I'll just mention that real quickly. But to calculate that lead, basically what you're calculating is the distance that this table will travel for it to make one complete rotation. And for this particular gear, the lead, the helical lead, is 13.328 inches. So this table would have to move 13.328 inches for it to make one complete revolution. Of course, we're not moving near that far. This is only about 5/8 of an inch thick. We're not making a complete circle all the way around, but we're going to be turning it, that lead, coming through here. So, and we have the lead attachment set up here. There's change gears in here that you can change to make that. And there's a book I have that has all the information in there. We talked about that previously. So with all that, I think we are set up. Let me kind of zoom in here, show you things just a little bit closer, and we're going to start trying to make some cuts. Because this is the very first time I've ever cut a helical gear, before I cut the real gear that's in cast iron, I want to cut a practice one. I've got a practice gear that's just, this is some nylon type plastic, I think. It should machine pretty easily. And I just want to get everything worked out before I actually go over here and cut my blank that I spent a lot of time making and hopefully keep from screwing that up. So the first thing I did here was, of course, after I got everything set up on the angles and got my lead and all that, is I needed to get the cutter set up on the center of the blank. And I didn't show this on the video, but basically what I did was, I'm looking at the center in this direction so that it is the center of this axis is in line with the center of this axis. That is going to be a center that moves along this axis. But if basically, if you go straight down the center of this is going to go straight down through the center of this shaft as well. Now, there's all kinds of fancy ways of doing this. I did it a pretty quick and dirty way that I have found works real good for me, and I just basically got the cutter turning, and I just barely raised the table up and moved the table back and forth until I found where it made that first contact. It's going to make the very first contact at the very highest point here. There's a little bit of trial and error involved. You're barely touching the surface, so if you don't get it right the first time, you just move it a little bit and do it again until you get it where it just barely touches, and that should get you lined up on center. I already have that done, and with that done and everything else, all my leads and everything else set like they should, what will happen is, again, as the cutter's cutting, as it feeds in, as this feeds in, this gear is going to rotate, and it's going to keep the center of the cut in the center of that cut that we're making. And to show that, I'm going to illustrate it here right now. We'll turn the machine on and just kind of let you see how this is going to work. Cutter on, and we will engage the feed. That's going to start feeding the table in, and as that's happening, you see we are rotating the gear at the same time. Now I've got it making barely just touching the surface here, and as that comes across, you're going to see a line where it's just barely touching that gear all the way across. And if you notice, that line is in a straight line across that gear. Now once we're out of the cut, I'm going to turn off my feed, and because of the way this whole thing is set up, we're just going to have to actually let it feed back out of that for each pass, which is a little bit different than with normal gears. Normal gears, you just go straight in and out. It's not a big deal, but here, because everything is timed, we have to move it back out. And we have very little slop and everything in our tables here, so our connections and gears, so everything should work out pretty good. Now, again, to show you what's going to happen is now I'm going to index the tooth for my 30 teeth per inch. We've done that, and I'm just going to let it feed back across. And again, we're just barely touching the surface right now, but I want you guys to see how this is going to work before we actually start cutting. So again, it's just barely touching the surface of the gear there. We'll let that come across, and that will be the bottom of the two teeth. All right, once we're through, we will let it feed back out. With the cutter just barely touching the surface up here, I know that I need to, that's basically zero, and what we need to do is we need to lower that cutter into the cut. Because I'm cutting plastic, I'm going to do this all in one pass. When I'm cutting it in cast iron, I'll probably do 2 passes. But according to my calculations, the whole tooth depth here is 215 thousandths. So what I'm going to do is I've got an indicator set up here between my mill and the table for all intent and purposes. We need to raise this table up 215 thousandths so we can just direct read it right off of that indicator. So we're going to go up 1 full turn here, that's 100 thousandths. We're going to do 2 full turns, that's 200 thousandths, and then we're going to do 15, which is about right there. And I am going to lock my table. All right, here we go. Let's see what happens. We're going to come into that cut. And let it cut completely through. Of course, this cutting plastic, this is like cutting butter compared to real metal, but it'll give us a good indication of how this whole process is going to go. I may have a few little burrs on there, but no big deal. All right, we are completely out of that cut. I'm going to back feed back through there. So with that last cut made, we're going to go ahead and index the cutter here again. I moved it over that far, and then we will slide this scepter around. That'll get me lined up on my next one. We'll engage the feed, and as we do, you'll notice the whole head starts turning and going through that cut. Keeps the cutter right on the center of the cut at all times and enables that cutter to make a straight line cut across there at that angle. So kind of slick how all this works. Once we kind of get out of that cut on the back side, I'll just reverse the table. We will feed back through there again. There's very minimal backlash in this whole setup, so it's going right back down that same path again. We'll let it move back until it clears, and we can index again here in a minute and make our next cut. Now again, I'm making a full depth cut here because of the material that I'm cutting in. When we do the actual gear and cast iron, I will probably do this in 2 passes. All right, here we go. Going to our next cut here. There we go. And we'll cut back through there again. One more pass. I think a lot of people are confused because the whole head is turning, and yes, it is. And the plate is turning pretty much in the same relative fashion each pass, but then we're rotating, indexing the part on top of that. So there's 2 different things going on here simultaneously, or between each cut rather, to enable this to work properly. All right, there we go. Let's come back out of that cut, back out. That'll reverse everything on here. And we'll come back out to the next cut. Rinse and repeat. Got to do this 30 times to get all the way around. I'm going to change the angle of the camera here so you can kind of see what's going on a little bit better. First, we're going to index our part. There we go. And then we will feed the cut through there. You can see what's happening as it's feeding in there. The lead, or the rotation of the cutter as it's moving forward, as with the table move, is geared perfectly so that we're getting that 45-degree angle cut all the way down through there. So now that we're through the cut, let's back out, and we will go through one more time. Well, we are continuing on here about was about 3/4 of the way around, I guess, and appears to be going good. I did make one adjustment. I got to look, in the tops of these teeth were a little bit narrow compared to the original, and I went and double checked, and I had misread my measurement on the depth. There was actually 2 on the worksheet, and I chose the wrong one, is what happened. But the depth was supposed to be 200 thousandths instead of 215. So I just dropped the table back down 15 thousandths to get me back to where I need to be. for the purpose of this test fit. That's why I'm doing it. So so we can kind of have a work out the kinks on this blank rather than screw up the part for real. And that's kind of the plan here. So anyway, things are progressing, moving right along. And hopefully we'll have us a successful cut here in just a little bit. We can take it out and really do a good inspection on it. So it is a little bit slow having to back through those cuts, but thankfully it's not a really long cut. Like I said, you'd have to go a little over 13 inches to make a complete spiral all the way around. 13, I can't remember the exact number, but 13 point something in the travel, that's the lead. But that's what we needed to get that 45-degree angle. All right, we're about to come out of that cut. About there. Go ahead and index another spacing and continue on. All right, this should be the final pass. And if I did all my divisions right, that should split the difference there between them two teeth. We'll see what happens here once I can take a look at it. It looks like it's pretty good. I think we did all right. Yeah. All right. One spiral gear. Looks like it's machined. We'll back out of that one. And pull it off and do a little inspection and see how it looks. But I think we have been successful. So there we go. That looks like helical gears. And I've got one of the segments, that gear that we had that was the original one is broken. But you can see it comes in at a 45-degree angle or 90-degree angle to it and fits it very well. I think this is a success. So I'm happy with my setup. I'm happy with my procedures. I'm happy with the outcome. Looks pretty darn similar. Seems to mesh pretty good. So I think we're good. I think we're good to go for the real thing. Well, there we go. My first ever helical gear. I'm excited. I'm happy with the outcome. I think everything has worked right. I think that doing our homework paid off here, and we've had success. So up next, we'll be mounting in the actual gear here. That is going to be the for real gear. This is cast iron, and we're going to try machining that. And we'll be doing that in a separate video and hope that everything goes well. I think it will. I'm pretty stoked. So with that, guys, that's going to be a wrap on this one. catch me on the next one. We'll try to cut things for real and hopefully won't have no screw ups along the way. This is a one-time shot without having to remake that whole thing, which I don't want to have to go down that path. So again, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Thumbs up and comments, greatly appreciated. Hit that bell icon to get notifications for new videos. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. We'd greatly appreciate that. And as always, a big, huge thank you to my supporters out there who support the site through Patreon, PayPal, etc. We really couldn't do all this without your efforts. And with that, guys, we're going to sign off. We'll catch you on the next video. Again, thanks for watching.